Welcome participants for the Communicative English class. And I hope all of you are the English teachers. And with this, like, we would know like why we are into this topics, communicative English, and also like why into specifically into linguistics.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Can I have a few responses from? Yes, sir.
Actually, I made as your host, ma'am. If anyone comes, you just allow them, ma'am.
That's okay, fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as people of language teachers and as people who teaches language, we would know the importance of the language. And right now, as we are in this technological era and the information era, we would know the importance of English language specifically, as which is one of the most spoken language in the world. And as language teachers, it is very important to uh, teach the language in a proper way, in an effective way, because the outcome is more important than anything else in teaching. That is what. And teaching is always should be the student centered. And as English teachers, like why it is important for all the teachers to be effective in communicating in English. And it's because like only as teachers, if we set a model and we have to set a model, so only then we can make the students learn the language in an effective way, and with which where they can shine in their uh, official forum in a very very effective way. And what is linguistics and why linguistics? Any language, as language teachers, any language will have its own structure, will have its own features, will have its own unique characteristics. So, as any language teachers, it is very important to know the linguistics of the language, be it Tamil language or be it English or French, Greek and Latin. Any language teachers must be aware and must know the linguistics behind the language that which a teacher is teaching. So that is why here we are today to discuss a few aspects and a few concepts that is which is related to the linguistics of and specifically the English language. And before getting into that, let's just get to know like what is linguistics. So I hope that the screen is visible and my voice is audible and clear. If there is any issue, please do let me know. Okay. So what is linguistics? Linguistics is the scientific study of language. Why scientific study? And why do we call that as a scientific study? Because the other people, maybe the non-language teachers, they would see language just for communication. So for them, if they are able to communicate and if they're able to reach the other person, communication is a one-to-one process, or it is from 1 to n, infinite numbers. Any message that which the encoder and decoder, the person who sends it, and the person who receives, if they just get the message for them, for the non-language teachers, for them, for the non-language people, the purpose is solved. But as the teachers of language and as we are teaching the communication in a very, very effective way, it is more important to see the scientific aspect of the language, because if only we know the base of the language, it will be effective and it will be good to learn and to use the language. So that is why we are into the scientific study of the language. Here as language teachers, we'll never see communicate language as just for communication. There are a lot of scientific aspects that which is inside the language. So that is why this topic, linguistics, is very, very important. And in the forthcoming classes, we'll also discuss about phonetics, which is also one of the important aspects in the linguistics. So linguistics is a scientific approach and it is a scientific study of a language. And linguists, who are linguists? Linguists are people who study linguistics, and those are the experts in linguistics. So linguists are the experts where they have studied in depth, to a certain extent, in depth of a language, on those who work on the specific languages. For example, most of the people would study on one specific languages. Maybe for there will be a few people who actually do a little comparative study on two languages or more. But uh, one language is very common with the language teachers. Two or more languages, like where we have a very, very few numbers who are experts in two or more languages. So linguists are the experts in linguistics and where they just study on the specific languages. So the main goal of linguistics is to increase our knowledge and understanding. So this is the base of linguistics. Why linguistics and what is the purpose does this linguistics do? To increase the knowledge and understanding. If only the language teacher has the base knowledge in an effective way, in an efficient way, and if they understand properly, and only then they can teach the students and make the students learn the language in an effective way. But in spite of 12 years of education in English medium and in spite of getting exposed to the English language, 12 plus 5 plus 2 and so on, there will be more people who has problem with communicating in the language. And even, so sorry to say, even with people with BA English or MA English, they do have a few people, I don't mean to say that everyone, but a few people will have the problem in communicating effectively. Why is that? That is because like how effectively they have gained the knowledge and how effectively they have understood it and how effectively they are able to implement it. So it is the base is the knowledge and the understanding. That is what is more important. And that is why we have chosen this topic for linguistics for the communicative English. Communication is just not by spoken. Here we are, as we are getting into the scientific study, it includes all the four skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. As English teachers, all of you will be aware that these are the four steps to learn any language. So we are going to learn the language the language. The first step is the listening, and that is receptive skills, and speaking and writing are productive skills. So only when the receptive skills are effective, we'll be able to produce more. So the main purpose is to increase the knowledge and understanding. That is why the linguistics. So the knowledge attained in linguistics has many practical applications. So it's just not one or two, it has more practical applications, and this is the base for everything. The base for the language learning and also for the language teaching. I hope the slide is clear. If there is any issue, please do let me know. So now we are into the characteristics of linguistics. So what are the characteristics? Linguistics is the systematic study of the language. So it's a systematic study of the language and that which deals with the structure. So how every word is set and how every sentence is formed and how every word is formed. That is to some extent that which deals with the study of the structure. And this is also related to the evolution of human language. So as we are using the human language, it's about how the human language evolved and how the human language got its structure, form, set, pattern, and all that, and how effectively it is being able to use. Maybe if you look into the evolution of the human language, initially where people just started imitating the natural sounds, the sounds from the nature. So just by imitating the bird, the sounds of the birds, the sounds of the wind, breeze, and all that, where they started communication. So initially, it was the communication was just by imitation, and slowly the human language evolved. And as teachers, like all of us would know, like how we are able to convert the sound from the vocal cord into the language. Just the air that's been converted into the sound. So it also studies about the evolution of the human language, and it is applicable to every aspect of human endeavor. So it is just like that, not easily that where the human language evolved as the evolution of the human. Like it was a very slow process, and it is still a continuous process because even now we are able to speak, read, write, do, and all that, and still there is a lot of development that which is going on. So it is the aspect of human endeavor. And what is linguistics is all about? It's all about how words are put together and how it functions. So how the words are arranged and what is the role of each and every word in a statement or in a sentence. Each and every word has its own role and has its own features and has its own value. For example, even in this sentence here, we have linguistics is a systematic study of the structure and evolution of human language. Just think that, for example, if you skip out one or two words in the sentence, do you think that it will convey the correct meaning, grammatically correct meaning? No. As language teachers, we would know that each and every word in a sentence is very, very important. So this is the detailed study about how words are put together in a sentence and how it functions. So many sentences will make a passage, will make a paragraph, and that in turn will make an essay or a very big write-up. So, so each and every word is important, and even in one particular word, the letters in one particular word is also very important. For example, we have a word called word where
Wow.
the spelling goes like this: WORD. Do you think like if you just mix the letters in the word WORD, if you just make it ODRW, do you think that it makes a word and gives a meaning? No, definitely not. So that is what language is. That is what structure is. That is what form is. And that is why linguistics is important. So each and every aspect in the language, in the word is very, very important. So a letter has to be properly arranged, and only then it will make a meaning, and only then we call that as a word. And those words clubbed together in a proper structure, in a proper form, will make a sentence. If and it gives a meaning, and only if it gives a meaning, we call it as a sentence. Otherwise, we'll just call it as a group of words or just jumbled words. So everything has got its own function and meaning. So sounds are brought together, and sometimes when this happens, they change their form and do interesting things. So these sounds are combined together to make words, and these sounds are combined together to make sentences, and then forms a passage, paragraph, and then we talk. Even now, as we are talking and as I am communicating to you and as you are listening, there is a common language. So only because of which that whatever I am saying that you are able to get it and it reaches you, and to some extent you are able to understand. So there is a commonality base there. So that is what the language does, and that is the main role of the language. Language is not just for an individual; it is for the bigger group, a very big community. So that is why we come on the base of commonality, common background, the same features and all that with respect to each and every language. So the sounds are brought and they have their own functions and forms. And next is the word arrangement, that which we were talking about a little earlier. That the words are arranged in a certain order, and sometimes the beginnings and the endings of the words are changed to adjust the meaning. For example, like as English teachers, all of you would have some examples with you right now. So as we change the place of the word in a sentence, definitely the meaning changes. And even when we get into it, the intonation, all that, even that conveys a lot of meaning. The pitch of the voice, the intonation, the rise and fall of the voice, all that conveys a meaning. So these are very, very small details of a language, but they does play a very, very vital role in the language. So each and every aspect is very important in the language. Then the meaning itself can be affected by the arrangement of words and by the knowledge of the speaker about what the hearer will understand. So linguistics is a study of all of this. As what I told you a little earlier, like whatever I communicate, I say that it should be reachable and you should be able to hear properly and listen and understand clearly according to what I say. In the understanding, like whatever I say, it should reach you the way that I mean to say it. So that is where the communication is. If it reaches the other way around, then there is a break in the communication, and or otherwise the communication is not properly done. I haven't communicated properly. So that is why we have this commonality, the understanding aspect. So studying in depth about the language is what is called as linguistics. So study of the language, structure, form, and all that. And what is linguistic analysis? Linguistic analysis is analysis of language form, language meaning, and language in context. So language form, for example, like how the words and what is the role of each and every word in a sentence. As I told you earlier, like if the words are not arranged properly, then they will not convey the exact meaning or the correct meaning. They will be just called as a jumbled words or group of words. And the meaning of each and every word. If it is a word, it has a meaning and it conveys a meaning. So it has to be arranged properly in a form so that it conveys the correct meaning. And in the context. So this is also one of the important aspects when it comes to the language. In which context that we use a word or that we use a term or we use a sentence, even that plays a vital role. So as language teachers, we need to get into the nuances of the language aspects. That is what is more important. So what does this linguist do? The linguist, they traditionally analyze human language, okay, by observing an interplay between sound and meaning. So as the human beings evolved and as the human language evolved, even in the first part or even in the initial stages, people did not started studying about the structure, form, and all that. It just took some time or a lot of time for the people to observe the language and then to study in depth between the sound, meaning, and it was the language was only oral first, and only later on it got the written format when they came out with the word descriptions and all that. Uh, Thangaveli sir, it's just 1 minute, so I hope that we can rejoin the meeting again.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Please, participants.
Participant, like we can rejoin with this the same link. Thank you. Just for a minute. So we were discussing about the analysis and what this linguistic analysis does and all that into the language. That's what we were discussing. And as all of us are aware that the language evolved as human beings evolved slowly. And it was only the later part of it where we got the written language. And initially the language was only in the oral form. So only when it reached the written form where the scriptures, the signs, the letters and all that started coming slowly. And it is purely the human who gave the shape to the language, the sound, the structure, the spelling, the scriptures, the sign, the letters and all that. It's purely man-made. Even though like we have the language from the nature, but the shape was given by the human and the letters. We were the one who just gave the sound to letter called A, and that has to be written this way and all that. So it was done everything through observing and all that, and it is an interplay between the sound and the meaning. For example, as I told you earlier, even the word called language, like who gave the meaning to this word called language or language, or who gave the letters, the combination of these letters, L, A, N, G, U, A, it is all given by us, the humans, the human being when they started structuring the language. So it is an interplay between the sound and the meaning. It is we the one who gave the meaning to the word meaning, and it did not come all of it. So that is the study of the language, the structure, form, and all that. So the linguistics also deals with the social, cultural, historical, and political factors. So this is what is more important. As we were telling that language was human man-made, and we were the one who gave the shape and all that. How a language evolved, and we have n number of languages on earth, and even in India, as we are known for the diversity, and we are known for the unity and diversity and all that. We have so many languages in India, but not every language have the written form. A few languages do not have a written form in the world, but most of the languages have got the written form. But how any language or each and every language is designed, the structure and all that, it's all on the basis of the social, the cultural, historical, and the political factors. All these influence the language. Be it any language for that matter, all these factors are influence the language. And that is why when we study a language, we need to know about who uses the language and how they used it and how they structured, form, and all that. That is why we always study a language through the literature. Through literature, it is easy to anyone. It is easier for anyone to learn a language. So all these features will definitely make an impact on a language. The social feature, the cultural feature, historical, and also political. And even if we get into the words or the way in which language been formed, structured, used, these influences a lot the social structure, the cultural structure, and all that. For example, even if we take a very common example of Tamil and English language, now we are able to find some Tamil words in English, and we are able to find some English words like where it has
The bread.
been like a, excuse me, where those words are being seen as a Tamil word as such. But how it came and how it evolved and how it happened, it is all because of the usage. As we started using it continuously, at a point of a time where two languages might in future might become one. We do not know like how far. It just we can say it might. So any language for that matter is the base from the social, cultural, historical, and the political factors. Why political factors? Because the politics, the political factors can influence a language to develop or even to diminish or even to be eliminated from a part of or a part of the language or country and all that. So that is why we have the feature called political factors here, because even politics does play a role. Even for example, even now as we are into the new education policy, we do know about so many new features that has cropped up, and we are even into the debating about the language system and all that. So politics does have an impact on the influence of the language form. So that is why we always say even that is more important. So studying about all this, discussing about all these are the basis of the linguistics. And what is a linguist does? They actually investigate how people acquire the knowledge. So that is more important. So how people acquire the knowledge about language. So linguist is purely a study about language. So how the linguists study about the knowledge acquiring and how this knowledge interacts with other cognitive processes. Other cognitive processes like cognition, as all of us know, is understanding, knowledge, perspective, and all that. So, how do we acquire the knowledge about language and how it interacts with the rest of the perspectives or with the rest of the understanding, and how it differs, how it varies across speakers and geographic regions? As we were talking about political, social, cultural, and historical perspectives, even geographical regions has its own impact on the structure or the form of the language, or even with the words of the language. So even geography plays a vital role in the language. And what do? They just do how to mold this language computationally. So with all these features, with all these characteristics, how they form a language, and investigating all these aspects is what a linguist does. And that is what linguistics is. So acquiring, we acquire something or we acquire the knowledge. So how do we acquire and how do we develop that, and what is the base of that development of a particular language? That is what a linguist does. I hope that it is pretty clear, because uh, for communicating in English or for communicating any language, this is the base to understand the importance of the linguistics of a language. Uh, Maybe a few might think like, why do we need to know the structure, form, and all that, as this is just for communication and all. But in order to do it effectively and efficiently, this is more important. Knowing the base, understanding the base, having a strong foundation in the language is very important for a language teacher or for anybody who wants to communicate effectively in a language. And that is why we are just getting into the nuances of the linguistics and the and what the linguist does. So that is what we are discussing now. And the linguist, they study how to represent the structure of the various aspects of language. So what a linguist does, a linguist get into the structure of different structures in the language, be it a word or be it a meaning or be it a letter or be it a sentence and all that. They just get into the nuances of the language. They get into the each and every aspect of the language. That is what a linguist does. So they study how to represent. So how a word can be represented in a language, or what is the meaning of a word, and how that meaning in a particular context can be used, and how a meaning can vary. So as language teachers, I hope that all of us would be aware of contextual meaning and the connotative meaning and the denotative meaning. Contextual meaning and the dictionary meaning. In the dictionary, there will be meanings given, and for few words, there will be two or three or more number of meanings given. But when certain words come in a different context, they does take a different shape, they does take a different meaning. So that is what is the speciality of the language, and that is why we have two aspects of meaning: connotative meaning and the denotative meaning, contextual meaning and the dictionary meaning. So in which context we use a particular word, depending on the context, the meaning varies or it slightly differs. So that is also very important. Even that will be studied by a linguist. So how to account for different linguistic patterns theoretically? So this is what a linguist does. Linguist does not just stop by structuring, forming and all that. They create certain theories and they set patterns theoretically. So that is what they do. And how the different components of language interact with each other. So there are a lot of components. For example, if we take grammar, there are a lot of grammatical aspects. Like, for example, the parts of speech is the base for the grammar, as we have noun, verb, adverb, adjective, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections, and all that. So how these does play a role in a sentence, and what is the role of each and every part of a speech. So getting into the in-depth of each and every word in a sentence, and how it is being used, and the way in which it has to be used, all these will be accounted by a linguist. So this is the role of a linguist, and that is what they do it in order to make it very clear, because anything has to have a formula, anything has to have a structure when it comes to the commonality. It should not differ, or it should not vary depending on the individual. Then it cannot be a common language. It can be just only an individual's language. Individual's language cannot be used in a common form. So in order to have the commonality, and that is why people before the linguist have studied in depth about each and every aspect of the language. So, what are the disciplines of linguistics? So, as we are just only into the introduction of linguistics, this is a very, very vast area. Just in one session, or in one day, or in 1 week, or in 1 month, nobody can master linguistics. Okay, that is why even in the title it just says in linguistics and introduction. It's in-depth, vast. It's a kind of an ocean, like where each and every aspect has to be studied in depth. But we are just going to touch only the main aspects of the linguistics, and this is just a kind of a introducing session as a language teachers, because this is more important for communication. So what are discipline of linguistics, and what do they do? They actually focuses on the theories of language structure, the variation and use. So how the language structure and how it works, and what are its forms, and what are the variations that is possible in a language structure, and how they can be used. So all these are into the in-depth study of the linguistics. And then the description and documentation. See, even in the first point, we just said that linguistics is a scientific study of the language. So as is a scientific study, there should be a proper description that which is to be given in a language or given to a language, and proper documentation is also very, very important. Because imagine if people before, or if the linguists did not study about linguistics, or if they haven't come out with any descriptions, or if they haven't done any documentation, do you think that it is possible for us to study about linguistics in detail and to study about structure of the language detail for us today? No, it is not possible. So people before, they have done in detail study, and it's just going on, because as language is eternal, it just keeps improving, and still certain studies are going on, as there are a lot of changes going on in the human languages, and the implications of the theories of language. So, how those theories been formed and how they can be implemented so that language can be learned and language can be used effectively. So that is also more important. Why language? For communication, simply, just in the first point, and how to use it in an effective way. And that is why, yes, yes, please, participants, could you please mute yourself? Any questions can be discussed towards the end of the session, or any queries or clarities can be discussed towards the end of the session. So the implications of the theories of language for an understanding of the mind. Yes, as we know, it is the evolution of the human language. So it is the human mind and the brain that which decides. As linguist, it is very important to know like how the brain works or how each and every aspect is being designed, because that is also more important. Because maybe a few would be very eloquent in language, a few will be very eloquent in other scientific aspects. So it is not that everybody is efficient in all the aspects in all the fields. It depends on the brain working, or it depends on the mind. And to some extent, we can even say that it depends on the genetical aspects. So even the mind and the brain workings is more important with respect to the language, with the study of the language, and also with the usage of the language. So how effectively an individual is able to use it. And so that is also very important. And there's also studies about the mind, brain, human culture, as we have discussed earlier, social behavior, and language learning and teaching. So there is a difference between language learning and teaching. uh, for example, anybody can learn a language, and also anybody can teach a language. But specifically, who can teach a language in an effective way? Like as language teachers, it is important for them to get into the base of the language, base of the structure and the form of the language. And that is why we are discussing about this topic called linguistics today. So as this is a scientific study of the language, any language teachers to some extent should be well versed with respect to this topic in particular. So that is what the language teaching is. And that is why it is more important as a language teachers. So as we are discussing about the linguistic aspects, and all that, the one other thing that which, excuse me.
Miss online class la irukken pa.
Okay, fine.
இன்னைக்கு வரலையா?
Participants,
Could you
please.
please mute other participants, please? Okay, fine. Okay, anyway, like we do understand that there are a lot of difficulties, but set aside, let's continue the discussion. So now into the grammar. So as we were discussing about linguistics, linguists, and why, what features, characteristics, and all that, grammar is again a very, very important one. And when we, even as an English teacher, when we hear the word, the grammar, maybe for a few might feel that it's a little drowsy and all that, but it is a quite very interesting area to discuss, to study, and also to teach. Maybe somehow the word grammar always relates to the dullness and all that, but it is a very, very interesting area to be studied. So once if we are able to some extent grasp the grammar properly, then the usage of the language becomes very easy. But on the other hand, I would like to tell you that just by understanding or learning the grammar by heart, and just by understanding the rules and applying the rules by heart, doesn't mean that we'll be able to, or anybody will be able to communicate in a language properly. That's again and not an effective way of learning a language, and through that communicating will not be very effective. Okay, so grammar is just a part of it, learning a language and to communicate effectively. Just a part, and we cannot say that it is the only way to learn a language. So as language teachers, even to our students, we should not impose them just the rules, or we should not just make them memorize the rules, apply and all that. Grammar should be taught the way in which all the four skills be taught, like L, S, R, W. It should not be imposed separately. As we teach and as all of us, as language teachers, all of us will be aware the way in which we learnt our mother tongue. Our parents or our society did not make us sit in a room, or it did not teach the grammar for our mother tongue. How do we learn our mother tongue? We just learned by listening. So that is the way in which that we have to learn any language, or anybody has to learn any language. So making a person sit in a room and learn, memorizing a rule and applying the rule will not make a person learn a language, and that will not help a person to use the language in an effective way. But yet it is very important, maybe in the later part. Maybe if a person is able to reach a half of the way in learning a language, in that level, maybe grammar would help. But it should be incorporated and it will come automatically. So that is how grammar has to be learned. So as such here, grammar is a system of rules that which governs the production and use of utterances in the language. As we discussed earlier, like how a word is formed and how a sentence is formed and how a passage or paragraph or an essay or anything, any written format is formed. So grammar does play a role. Even when we are speaking, all of us would know like whether we are grammatically using a language correctly or not. So to some extent, when we get exposed to the language, we'll be able to understand how effective we are and where are we making the mistakes. And more important is to learn a language, to communicate effectively, is getting exposed to the language, using the language every day and getting exposed to the language every day. So that is very, very important. So that we have to understand. So these rules apply to sound as well as meaning and include componential subsets of rules such as those pertaining to phonology, morphology, and syntax. So if we get into linguistics, these are the major aspects, or these are called as subfields in the linguistics. Phonology, that which deals with the sounds of a language; morphology, that which deals with the words; syntax with the sentence structure, form, and all that. So these are very, very important. So linguistics, if it is linguistics, when we come across a word for linguistics, these words will accompany the word for linguistics automatically. And the list just goes on. Phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, structure, and all that. It just goes on. Discourse, analysis, stylus. It just goes on like that. The list goes on like that. So this is what. So these are part of it, and these are part of grammar. So phonology, morphology, and syntax. How a word has to be pronounced, and what is the meaning of the word, and how a word is being formed, and how a sentence be formed, and what is the meaning of a sentence as such, and the structure, form, and all that. So now we are getting into the structure of the language, and as part of the linguistics, we are getting into the next level in the linguistics. And there are a lot of subfields, as in the previous slide we saw phonology, morphology, and syntax. We're just getting into what is phonology and what is phonetics. In tomorrow's class, we'll be dealing with this topic, phonetics and phonology, in detail. We'll be studying about the sound forms, the structure, and how we have to use each and every sound and all that, and how it has been produced and all. In detail, we'll study in tomorrow's session. But today, it's just a sort of an introduction. So what is phonetics? So to say, it is not phone, it is phonetics. Okay, the study of speech sounds in their physical aspects. So how each and every sound is there, and what is the physical aspect, the properties of the sounds. The study of the physical properties of each sound. So how each and every sound is played or used in a creation of the word, and how it has been pronounced and all that. Speech sound, production, and perception. So how do we get it? How do we take it? And it also delves with into their acoustic and articulatory, the way in which we hear it and we articulate it. So it is hearing and articulation. So it is listening, it is taking it in and speaking out. It is and producing out. So this is what is more important with respect to phonetics. Phonetics deals with the study of the speech sounds, study of the sounds of the language. So it is like phonetics deals specifically with the listening and speaking. So the way in which we listen to the sound and the way in which we articulate or produce a sound. So studying about all these properties will come under category called phonetics. And now into the next, phonology and phonetics. Phonology is the study of speech sounds in the cognitive aspects. So phonology, as the word says, just study of the sounds and how it has to be studied in the cognitive aspects, the way in which it has to be understood, the way in which it has to be taken in, and the way in which it has to be used or produced. So the study of sounds as abstract elements in the speaker's mind that distinguish meaning. So as I told you earlier, language was formed was there only in the oral form earlier, and only later on in the later aspect, only towards the end of the development of the language, it just took and into in depth into the linguistics, study of phonetics, and all that. So it was an abstract element in the speaker's mind. So for that abstract, how the letters being given and how the sounds being given and how meaning for those sounds being given and how do we distinguish the meaning for each and every sound. A phoneme is a smallest unit of a sound. For example, there are two words called fun and fun, P-U-N and F-U-N. So there is just only one sound that which is different in these two words, P-U-N and F-U-N. The first sound, P and F. So just by the difference in this one letter, that is the small unit called phoneme, the word is different and also the sound is different and also the meaning is different. So that is what it is. So that is what we study in phonology. So studying about the phonemes in detail, studying about each and every sound and the role of each and every sound and the way in which each and every sound is produced through the air, through the vocal tract, or all that we'll study in detail. Okay, so the phonetics and phonology is a study of sound systems of language that deals with the basic utterances in speech. So how speech is produced and how speech sounds works and how we are using the language. And the next aspect and the next important aspect in the linguistics is morphology and syntax. So what is morphology? Morphology, morphemes and all that. So the study of the formation of words. So how a word is formed. So the study of morphemes. So the individual words. Or the internal structure of words and how they can be modified. So how each and every word is formed and how they can be modified. Just one of the important aspect that which is related to the phonetics I would like to tell you now. We are producing the sound and we are converting the air from the lungs as the sound. But how are we able to produce or how are we able to convert? It is the combination of the vowels and the vowels and the consonants. So we'll discuss in detail in the next session. But now just be aware of all these terms. Even now, all of you as language teachers must be aware of all these terms. But we'll just discuss in detail in the next session in detail about the phonetics and the phonology. Because even to produce or to make a sound, there is a mechanism called airstream mechanism that it has to work, and only then we'll be able to convert. And there is a lot of workings that which happens with the organs of speech. So all that we'll discuss a little in the next session. And syntax. Syntax is a study of the formation of sentences. So first we just got to know how a word is formed, how sounds are being produced. Next, the word is formed, and now next it is the how sentences are formed. The study of how words combine to form grammatical phrases and sentences. So initially, as we were discussing, just a group of words cannot make a sentence. It has to be set in a proper form and it has to be set in a proper structure in order to convey a meaning, and only then we call any sentence as a grammatically correct sentence. Here we have a word called phrases. So we have two terms here, generally phrases and clauses. So we have word, we have sentences. In between a word and a sentence, we have a structure called phrases and clauses. Both these phrases and clauses are a group of words. A phrase will not have a complete meaning. A phrase will depend on a clause to have a complete meaning. So, but where a clause can be also called as a main clause, but we also do have subordinate clause, where a main clause is a complete sentence. It has a subject and a predicate. It has a subject and a verb. So it is a complete sentence and it conveys a complete meaning. But in case of a phrase, it depends on the main clause to have a complete meaning. And also in the case of a subordinate clause, the subordinate clause depends on the main clause to give a complete meaning. So when we discuss about in grammar, maybe like we can, and again, that is a separate area or a topic to be discussed. But now just need to be aware of phrases and clauses. So and then to the sentences. So it is the words, it is the phrases, clauses, and then to the sentences. So how these been combined and all that will be studied in the syntax. And again, these morphology and syntax are the branches of linguistics, and these are concerned with the study of the internal structure of words and sentences. And with the order, with the word order, that's again very important, and with the structure of meaningful linguistics units. This is what is more important, meaningful linguistics units such as words and morphemes. So every word and every sentence has to have a meaning with it. And to that syntax or syntacticians. Syntacticians are the ones who study the rules, the constraints, that kind of small hurdles or that which govern how a speakers of language can organize words into sentences. So syntax and morphologists, they study similar rules for the order of morphemes. Morphemes, as I told you, it is a subword unit, such as like prefixes and suffixes. In the grammar, we usually know like prefixes and suffixes, that which we added to the root word, either before or after, in order to change the meaning and the word slightly, or to make it a little opposite. We usually used to use prefix and suffix, and how they may be combined to form words. So studying about all these in detail, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, syntax, and all that, studying about all this in detail, step by step, it is what the morphologist or syntacticians will do. But together, the linguist will study well all these. So these are the main aspects of the linguistics. And now we are moving on to the next important subfield in the linguistics, that is called as semantics. So semantics is the study of meaning. So what is the meaning of each and every word, and what is the meaning of each and every sentence, and it just goes on. The study of meaning of words, that is the lexical semantics, and the fixed word combinations. So how certain groups of words can be combined together to make a phrase or to make a sentence. Again, phraseology, as you see a word here, it just studies about the phrases and how these combine to form meanings of sentences, as well as manage and resolve ambiguity. So as language is primarily for communication, and as human language is known for ambiguous nature and all that, even language will also have certain ambiguity. To some extent, it will not be very clear in the initial level or in the partial level. So to resolve all these confusions or to resolve all this ambiguity, that is where people started to study into the details of each and every aspect of the language, each and every aspect of the word pronunciation, the spelling of the word, the meaning of the word, the structure of the word, the form of the word, and all that. So as language teachers, it is very important to know all these aspects: phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and all that, and to know in detail before we use the language effectively. And apart from the study of the sound system of languages and word and sentence structure, linguists seek to specify the meaning behind the words and combination of words. So what is behind the words and combination of words? This is what we call it as the nuances of the language. Maybe a prose language will be a little clear or transparent, or it will be quite informative or more of facts, and it will be quite transparent. But to some extent, when we take the language of a poem and the and the contextual meaning, we were discussing, we were getting about knowing about the contextual meaning and the denotative meaning, the dictionary meaning. So that is where we need to know the behind the words, the meaning behind the words, and the meaning behind the combination of words. Linguists will also study about all this. So these are the nuances of the language. Even this is very important to be aware as a language teachers, or need to be aware about the linguistics. So the investigation of this is known as the semantics. That is, we are getting into the nuances of the language, particularly the meaning aspect of the word and the language as such. So semantics is the study of meanings. Uh, Participants, I hope that it is uh, to some extent clear about the terms in which that we are discussing now. There are a lot of terms that which is there in the linguistics, but we are just getting only into the important terms. Okay, and now to the pragmatics and discourse analysis. So we just got to know about phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and all that. Now into how to use the language. So pragmatics is the study of the language use, how a language is being used, or how to use a language. The study of how utterances are used in communicative acts. As primarily we are discussing, or it is just more about the communicating a language, communication has to be effective in the way in which we frame a sentence, we use the words effectively, because all of us communicate, but only to few we will listen, or only will few grab the attention. As language teachers, or as anybody who speak, all of you would have listened to so many speakers, or all of you would have listened to so many state speakers or orators. Not every orator will attract everyone, or not every orator will be effective, or uh, and be able to reach everyone. So that is where the matter is, how well they use it, or how effectively they use the language. So that is where the communication is all about. So this pragmatic study is about the study of
Excuse me,
the
madam.
language use. Yes, sir. So can
Less than
we
1 minute.
continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Can
fine.
okay, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So yes,
Just end the
participants.
session. Yes.
Okay, fine.